All right, all right. What's up, everybody? We are back with yet another review of people talking about metaethics, and we are on an endless quest to review every single video on the entirety of YouTube that covers the topic of moral realism and anti-realism. After we do that, we're going to cover all the podcasts, all the documentaries, all the books, all the articles, all the inscriptions, all the runic inscriptions on ancient stones, all the glyphs written on the monoliths, all of it. We're going to cover all of it. And we're going to talk about how everybody's wrong, except the moral anti-realists, who are, of course, completely correct about literally everything. There are no flaws with our position. We're just absolutely 100% objectively, stance independently correct. All right. So we've got Andrew May in here first for 1,000 land salute. We've got Cloud of Time for 500. You are not first. Sorry about that. And Ben Singleton for 250. So the video that is up today is Cliffe Knechtle. It looks like an older video where he's having a discussion on a college campus. It was uploaded somewhere. I don't know. So we're going to have a look at that. Now, sometimes I get this question. Why do you cover like a street preacher or apologist or somebody like that when they're talking about metaethics? Why don't you cover all the academics? I do cover academics. I talk to academics. I write about academics. I do that too. Now, you might think, well, why does it matter to cover these people? Well, like people that you might think don't have academic credentials or something like that. One, I really don't like academic elitism. So, I have this elite academic background. I don't think that automatically anoints me with the holy powers of being correct. People that are academics often get big heads, big egos, and make big mistakes. I'm not down with that. I'm not down with that. And Snake Oil Liniment says fourth. I like the enthusiasm. I'll give you 100 land salute for that. So good job. So welcome. Anyway, so I'm not a big fan of this like academic elitism thing. I don't think people need credentials to talk about philosophy. Now, if we're talking about something where there's like, if we're talking about doctors or something, okay, now I'm going to start caring a bit more about credentials. But when it comes to philosophy, I think that people may not appreciate, sometimes people think everybody's opinion on morality is equally valid or something like that. No, it's not. No, it's not. I'm not talking about like their first order moral positions. I'm talking about like their philosophical perspectives. Some people don't know what they're talking about. Some people have never opened a damn book on the topic. Some people don't know anything. Some people don't know anything, and then they just reason really well. They're just smarter and better at thinking or something. Or they're more open-minded and they're more capable of reasoning through things in a non-dogmatic way. So even a person that's not super educated can be better at a topic, and even a person that is super educated can be an egotistical blowhard who doesn't know much of anything because they don't like to challenge their position. So I really don't like the elitism behind that sort of thing. But the other thing is, like, for instance, excuse me, the Knechtles were at my campus not too long ago, and they were talking about stuff, and I'm sure that this topic came up. I think they were at the campus several times. I missed it. Nobody told me. I wish I'd known about it because I would have gone out there and talked to them and, tried to set something up. So, if they're going around saying things, they try to promote Christianity and blah, blah, blah. I'm not quite as interested in that. I'm just interested in an accurate representation of anti-realism and in the quality of arguments for and against moral realism and moral anti-realism. Now, I am convinced there are no good arguments for moral realism that are coming from anybody. I don't care if it's the gods of moral realism. They're not going to have a good argument. And if you think there is one, let me know. Drop a line in the chat, put one in the comments, email me. I want to hear about these allegedly good arguments. So it's not like I think if we looked in the high places, we're going to find better arguments. But it just, a lot of what draws people away from anti-realism, metaethical anti-realism, is the impression they have that it has these deplorable consequences and all this terrible stuff about it. It's just not true. Okay. I'm getting the stream cough. That's what I'm going to call it, the stream cough. I could go the entire day sounding perfectly fine, perfectly normal. I start streaming immediately. My throat is like I inhaled a bunch of smoke or something, and I start coughing. It's ridiculous. I don't understand why it happens, but someday we'll know what's going on with that. Now, I am going to be out of town traveling a couple times in the next few weeks, and then I'm having a baby. So when that happens, I am going to be on hiatus. I already put out all my TikTok videos. I don't have a big backlog of videos to share with you all. So it's probably going to be a hiatus for a while. But I will be back. I fully intend to keep doing videos. I'll probably pop in here and there during that period if I have a little bit of free time. But I'm not going to have that much free time. I tend to be a very distractible person. I tend to be like, let me do a stream. Let me write another blog post. And I need to set that aside for a bit, and be a father. So I am going to do that. But just it's not like I'm going to be gone for 3 years. I'm going to be probably a couple months or so. So like a month, you're not going to hear from me at all. Then the next month, maybe I'll pop in once or twice. Maybe I won't. If I'm enjoying spending more time with my baby than going on here, I'm doing that. And too bad for all of you. I won't be here, and moral realism will run amok. But at some point, I'll be back more frequently. And really, it's just I don't know exactly how things are going to go. But I'm not going to stop doing this. I am obsessive about this topic, and I'm going to keep doing it. So so we'll see how that goes. But it's going to be fun because there'll be like a baby me out there who will of course be an absolutely committed, evil, moral anti-realist who 20 years from now will be fighting the good fight as well. So be prepared. Be prepared. It's just around the corner. So oh right, we got $5 from Hunter Biden's laptops. Thank you, Hunter Biden's laptops. That is a ridiculous username. So Hunter Biden's laptop says, I'm going to call it, what should I call you? HBL? I don't know. Do you ever feel this is all a big waste, a big dodge of the wider inhumanity and clear absurdity of religious belief? I feel like the world is burning. I do, but yes. So, why this topic? Why am I so obsessed with moral realism and anti-realism? I don't know. But something about it, I got a bug where I really want to talk about this topic. And I know that there are many, many, many issues in the world that are more important than this. Like you say, you feel like the world is burning. There's wars everywhere. There's, so many things I could mention. But there are 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 people addressing those topics for every one person that addresses this topic right here. I have the only dedicated metaethics channel on YouTube? I might. There might be a few more. If there are, don't you think I would have known about them by now? But I've never heard of one. I don't think there's any other metaethics specific YouTube channels. I'm not sure there's any other metaethics specific blog. There's certainly blogs that cover the topic and channels that cover the topic, but any with the regularity I do, I'm not sure about that. So, this has become my little academic refuge and solace from a chaotic world that would be difficult for me to process, and also difficult for me to contribute meaningfully to. I'm a fairly anxious person. If I worry about stuff all the time, I worry about little things. And so if I got too worried about all the chaos and calamity going on in the world, I don't think it would be good for my mental health. I don't think I would be doing very well. So it's something I try to steer clear of. And I also just don't think I have the knowledge or insight to contribute substantively to an area of discourse that's so fully saturated by other people that have so much to say. But I think you're also referencing religious belief here. So, I don't talk about this, but so I focus on this topic of moral realism. Now, moral realism, it was an unpopular position among analytic philosophers. And if you're not familiar with some of the terminology, so you have Western philosophy. People typically attribute the origins to ancient Greece, and then it traveled to a few different places where the works of Aristotle and Plato were held, I believe, by the Arab world for some time, and then they were translated, and the Christians got a hold of it, and they brought it back into Europe. Now you have that Western philosophy, but you also have other philosophical traditions. Now, Western philosophy, a more recent tradition that developed in the Anglophone world. That's the world, the parts of the world where the predominant language is English, and there's a large British influence. This would be the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, obviously. So analytic philosophy is a more recent extension and outgrowth of Western philosophy that is typically distinguished from continental philosophy, which is more associated with the continent of Europe. So Western, another branch of Western philosophy, typically associated with France, Germany, and stuff. So this is philosophy that is typically it's fairly recent. We're talking like barely more than a century. is almost exclusively, although not entirely, done in English. By its canon of sacred texts is mostly English. So that's not to say all of it. It's analytic philosophers care a whole lot about like Aristotle and Plato and stuff. So, and that's all translations. So analytic philosophy grew in and emerged in a part of the world with an absolutely titanic Christian influence. So, there is a massive, massive, massive. I mean, we could get into like the whole history of it, and I'm not a historian on it, so a lot of it I'm not going to know. But the influence of Christianity on analytic philosophy is absolutely titanic, and it's also titanic. It has a titanic influence on the culture from which analytic philosophers tend to emerge. Now, not all analytic philosophers come from predominantly Christian or Western societies. People come over from other parts of the world or work in other parts of the world, and they get involved in analytic philosophy. They're all over the world. So it's not everyone. It's just a question of the preponderance of people tend to be from the Anglophone world. And even if they aren't, they will tend to read works in English, write in English, speak and teach and learn and study in English. And so to the extent that that has some sort of influence on them, it's going to change the way that people think to at least some degree. Sorry, see, there's the stream cough again. My God, what is up with that? So, when it comes to the realism and anti-realism dispute in particular, this arose, like the contemporary discussion arose, I think it's 1903, with G.E. Moore's work, I think it's Principia Ethica. Why am I having a brain fart where I feel like that sounds wrong? Yeah, that's what it is. What is wrong with me? So there he outlined stuff like moral naturalism and articulated the open question argument. I think there was some earlier stuff in philosophy that influenced that, certainly David Hume and other people, but that sort of set the stage for the contemporary discussion. So the contemporary metaethics discussion within analytic philosophy, or I guess you could say Anglophone philosophy, the stage was set around 120 years ago. And within that stage, you have, moral naturalism, moral non-naturalism. Those are the two main realist positions. Moore was seen to have dealt a substantial blow to moral naturalism, but moral non-naturalism wasn't particularly popular and fell into a kind of moribund status where it looked like it was on the way out the door for philosophers through the middle of the 20th century. And you had the ascendance of A.J. Ayer and R.M. Hare and the various types of emotivism. So universal prescriptivism from Hare, emotivism from did I say emotivism? Different types of non-cognitivism. Sorry. Emotivism being one type, prescriptivism being another type. These days, you have the contemporary expressivist accounts, which are the descendants or second generation, you could say, or maybe the third generation. I don't know how many generations there are. It's all metaphorical anyway. It's not like philosophical theories are like popping out babies. In any case, the impression is we don't have data on this, that realism went in a sharp decline through the middle of the 20th century. Maybe it was already pretty low at the start of the 20th century, but it enjoyed a few stages of resurgence. You had, I believe it was in the 80s, you had several philosophers start bringing back the case for a naturalist account of realism. And then I think it was more around the 90s that you started having the non-naturalist accounts enjoy a resurgence. And non-naturalism and naturalism too have enjoyed a kind of renaissance in contemporary analytic philosophy over the past, I guess you could say 30, 40 years or so. I mean, 30 for both collectively. But as a whole, it's been a solid few decades of realism enjoying some type of reawakening. Now, I don't know that we have good data on how much there's been a growth or increase, but you do have in 2009, when they surveyed analytic philosophers, mostly analytic philosophers, the 2020 Phil Paper survey, you could look at the way their demographics work. It's not exactly or exclusively analytic philosophers, but it is mostly. They had 56.4%, I believe, was the number of respondents that favored moral realism in 2009. And then in the 2021, it was 62%. So did it go up? Maybe. I mean, these things fluctuate, depends on your samples. You're always going to have you're going to have error bars around those numbers. But 6 points, that's not nothing, especially for only about 10 years. I mean, imagine a 6 point increase every 10 years. It's a hell of a lot. Is it on the increase? I would say, yeah, it certainly looks like it is. No, why? Why is moral realism so popular among analytic philosophers? At 62% currently, at least. Sorry, I'm saying analytic philosophers. I don't know the exact percentage for analytic philosophers because the sample isn't exclusively analytic philosophers. It is mostly analytic philosophers, but not exclusively. But we're in this rough ballpark of it's a lot, probably a majority are moral realists. I think that a big part of this is the legacy or the residual impact of Christianity on the people that are participating in these discussions. Now, that's a discussion. I think I've already given a lot of commentary on this. So, and I do appreciate it. That's like a whole video to talk about that. But I do think it's substantial, and I think check out Nietzsche, what he has to say about this kind of stuff. There is a lot to it, and I think that philosophers wildly underestimate the influences that culture have on shaping their proclivities, but also like the types of issues they focus on, what they read, how they think, what kind of sentiments or attitudes they have. We kind of swim in the water of this Manichaean dichotomy between good and evil. And it's very easy for people to have this external sense that some things are good and some things are bad and it's not up to me. Yeah, because you're in a Christian society. That's a natural way to think about things. If you were brought up in some other society that didn't think of things that way, I doubt people would have such a strong like intuition that moral realism is obviously true. So I think Christianity is having a big impact. And I really appreciate the comment. And thank you for the $5. Andrew Moy says, so if you return early, does that mean the baby is really annoying? I'm not, probably not. So no, I don't anticipate finding the baby to be really annoying, although I don't think it's a serious comment anyway. Scipio says, hi Lance, how's it going? And Hunter says, thanks for the sponsor. I appreciate it. All right. Let's see who else is in the comments, and then we'll get started on the topic. 17 minutes, I haven't got started. Devas asks, what's the subject? What was that? 5 minutes ago. I'm going to be looking at a Knechtle video. It's only 8 minutes. So if I get through that, I'm going to look at a Sean McDowell video. Oh, Devas says, just kidding. I already know. Devas says, Alex O'Connor's an emotivist, right? Yeah, he is. And he was recently in a video where he reaffirmed this again. I really still don't, I've never heard him argue for emotivism, like why he's an emotivist. Like, how would he respond to the Frank Geach problem? And I haven't heard him talk about this anywhere, at least not at any length. And I don't know if he's talked about like why he endorses the view, or I don't know. I'd really like to know why he endorses the view. Yes, Spinoza was an anti-realist, right? You know what? I don't know. I don't know what Spinoza was. So if somebody wants to go look into that, let me know in the chat. Devas says, the more I've been thinking about this subject for the last couple of years, the more of an anti-realist I become, and just can't even think of how people still hold to such a strange idea. Yeah, it's very, very strange, realism. And realists have worked, used to have Mackey's argument where you'd be like, well, whatever these moral facts are, they'd be really strange. And realists have done a lot to say, I don't think they're strange. I don't think they're strange. Okay, well, people that think that ghosts are real probably don't think ghosts are strange. I don't really care if they don't think ghosts are strange. That's super weird. So, Mackey was looking at this from a naturalist perspective and saying this non-natural stuff is weird. I don't push this as an argument, but I think if there were objective moral facts of the kind non-naturalists believe in, it'd be really freaking weird. I just don't think that's a good reason to think that there aren't facts of that kind, like my personal sentiments about what's weird or not. But that's not, Mackey wasn't going, I got the ick about these things, so they're not real. Their strangeness was supposed to be an allusion to how they're radically unlike the other things that a thoroughgoing naturalist would be disposed to admit into their ontology. It would be a bit like, you're sitting around, you've got this naturalistic scientific picture of the world, and someone goes, yeah, but I believe it's caused by magic. Like there's some particular phenomenon. Like why is that animal that way? It's magic. That's not going to square with your worldview very well. And so someone would need to present a lot better evidence for, that animal reproduces by magic rather than that animal like lays eggs, so yeah, I think people focus too much on the notion of like weirdness, strangeness, that sort of thing. Good old Tom Koth says, wasn't there a survey of Chinese philosophers that also showed pretty high realism percentage? Yes, there was. It was a survey of Chinese analytic philosophers. So it's not going to be particularly diagnostic of people from a different tradition. So if someone wants to pull that up, in fact, I'll just find it now. Yep, here it is. Here's a link. I'll throw that in the chat. And as you can see from the title, in fact, oh, I could just share the screen. Why don't I do that? So you see, it's called Do Analytic Philosophers in China Think Differently? A Survey and Comparative Study. So it's looking at philosophers in China that are trained in an Anglophone tradition. So they're not going to be representative of people that were not trained in that tradition. And yeah, they did find I think their rate was slightly lower, but I think it was still a majority. I'd have to check. Don't really, you know what we could check, right? Why not? Where is it? Where did I put it? Oh my gosh. There's the link. Okay. One second. I gotta find it. I just had it open and then it just vanished. I don't remember closing it. Let's look up the exact percentage. One moment. Okay, that's better. Oh, right. We could just probably look for moral realism. Moral realism, 52.1%. There you go. Instead of 62%. Okay, so that's the number. Why didn't I just do that to begin with? Yep, not 52% is not some big majority. It's a majority, but it's a marginal one. I mean, that's enough to win an election, but it's not enough to be like, yeah, it's the consensus. And I could just see people looking at this and saying that there's even a consensus among analytic philosophers in China, because anything over 50% is a consensus. It's a total misuse of that term. But people love to say that their slim majorities are a consensus. 62% is not a consensus. And I've seen people say that before, that there's a consensus in favor of realism. All right, let's look at a few more chats and then we'll get into the video, which I've now put up here, put it on full screen. Check the volume, pop that up. All right. Andrew Moy says, I don't think the Christianity hypothesis really fits the historical trends. Christianity is still a dominant feature of the culture when anti-realism was more popular. That is an interesting suggestion, but there's more to this than you might suppose. I don't think that's inconsistent with the data. So what you have here are competing trends and influences. And there's no reason in principle why people couldn't be influenced by Christianity to be inclined towards realism. And then some theoretical position or philosophical positions like logical positivism or something like that become popular. They influence people within the philosophical subcommunity to be inclined towards anti-realism. And then as that influence wanes, the realist features, or realist disposition that people may be more inclined to in analytic philosophy resurface and reemerge and take hold again. So it's not like two different factors couldn't play against one another. Two different tensions couldn't play against one another at the same time. You also have this secular enlightenment, like the rates of atheism are super high among philosophers. And so you also have these competing forces and trends that could suppress realism or endorsement of realism among analytic philosophers. And some of those forces waned and realism reasserted itself. Am I wrong, or does the idea of evincing defeat the Frege gauge problem? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Sorry, I'm not familiar with that type of response. StimCore says O'Connor mentioned Blackburn's higher order attitude solution in the Frege gauge, but only briefly. Where did he do that? So that's good if he's familiar with some of their responses. Nexus says, are you familiar with Sharon Hewitt-Rollett's realism? Yes, I am. I had a discussion on that probably 4 years ago now. It was a long time ago. I had some extensive discussion, not on the channel. It was in like a big Facebook thing, and there were some philosophers there, like professional philosophers and stuff. And we got into it a bit. I mean, so her position basically is that we have qualia. We have direct access to qualia that would entail moral realism is true. I don't know. I don't recall exactly if she thinks it's badness qualia, like moral badness qualia, or if it's like pain or suffering qualia. And then those are stance independently bad because we have, we have some kind of access to them and they're not dependent on people's stances or attitudes. But the idea here is to basically graft the case for moral realism onto the, various, a notion, not various. The idea is that, hey, we have phenomenal consciousness. One of the things we have access to in virtue of our possession of phenomenal consciousness is that certain sorts of experiential states, certain sorts of qualia are bad, and they're bad in a way that is like only makes sense on moral realism. And the idea there is just we're just immediately aware of the types of qualia that would ensure that moral realism is true. Now, I don't believe in qualia, so I'm not going to endorse that. So that's going to be a problem. And I don't think that's really going to solve a lot of the problems that I think moral realists are faced with. So yeah, I'm familiar with the view. I haven't really addressed it anywhere formally, like on my blog or YouTube channel or papers or anything, but more of it. It's the kind of position I'm surprised nobody else made. I think it's very interesting that she did push that position. So yeah, that's something that's out there. I have seen people herald it as this like super compelling position. I don't think that it is, but I'm glad someone's making it. Dow says, Alex O'Connor had to defend his emotivism in debate with Singer, Swinburne, and Fraser recently, but unfortunately they did not flesh it out. Yeah, so that's the most recent place I saw him mention he's an emotivist, but I found the audio quality to be so bad I was not really willing to continue listening to it. Does he defend the view at all, even if minimally there, or does he just mention? Because like most places I've seen him mention it, he just says he's an emotivist and then doesn't say why. So did he defend it there? I'll have to look that up if he did. Modern Moralist says, you inspire me, Dr. Bush. Thanks. Clonotime, it's a brief description of his view. Was anti-realism ever popular? Allegedly, anti-realism was popular in the middle of the 20th century. But keep in mind, we don't have data on this. This is just the sort of thing people report. And when you look at articles that came out from moral realists in like the 1980s, I think this is in maybe Boyd's work, they'll say stuff where it seems to imply or explicitly suggest that moral realism is an unpopular position. And they're working against the tides then. But it could just be that the literature that was being published on the topic happened. And I think I heard this, I don't know if it was from Mike Humer or somebody else. I have heard philosophers explicitly challenge the suggestion that moral anti-realism was ever especially popular among analytic philosophers in the middle of the 20th century. Again, we don't have concrete empirical data on this. We have anecdotes from philosophers. They seem to be almost entirely in one direction, which is, yeah, anti-realism seems to be the ascendant position here, but it could just be it was the loudest position at the time. So I don't think that we really know. Reflective journey. How are you even quantifying it before the 1900s? I'm not. I don't quantify it before the 1900s. Devos says, have you and Alex O'Connor ever talked? No, I think I have sent him a message or two before, but he hasn't responded. I mean, he's got a big channel. He's got a lot to do. I'm a very small fish. So not the kind of person I think it'd be very likely for him to reach out to. Rolette's view is similar to Sinababu's, right? I'm not sure how similar they are. Jimoy says, it might be possible to do a very rough approximation of the historical popularity of anti-realism by just counting the known proponents of both positions. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be very crude. And some of the attributions to people prior to Moore are going to be a bit anachronistic. Some people I would be comfortable calling a moral realist, like probably like Plato. But other people, I don't know. I mean, like Hume, anti-realist probably. But some people, I don't know where to place them. And some people, even when they have a rather large corpus of work, it's hard to place them. Like, is Kant a moral realist? I mean, kinda, but I've had maybe, but I've had Kantians say absolutely not. He's some kind of anti-realist constructivist. I don't know. It's hard to place some people. And even if you think it is easy to place Kant, and you're like, oh, obviously he's a realist or an anti-realist, there might be other people where it's not so clear. All right, let's get into the video. I think that's enough. 30 minutes. Oh, let's do it.
Policy is I resent his policy is I resent his talents. I resent him being superior to me, and therefore I'm going to knock him down.
What makes him superior to you? What is the quality that would make?
Because I at times buy into my culture that says guys who are really handsome. Would you please listen to my answer before you interrupt me again?
Well, the thing is,
well, why talk with you if you're going to consistently interrupt?
Well,
are we having a rational discussion or is this an emotion?
Well, the reason why I want to get to that.
Claims to be a moral anti-realist, as always, write down some notes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you're an atheist, you say there's no God.
That's like the definitional statement of being.
Sorry, I interrupted myself, and I just think it's too fast, so I'm going to slow it down a little.
Claims to be a moral anti-realist, as always, write down some notes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you're an atheist, you say there's no God.
That's like the definitional statement of being an atheist.
You say there is no God.
Yeah.
You say that you know the universe so well that you know God doesn't exist. You're an atheist.
I don't have
no God.
No,
that's an incredible claim.
I guess you could say it's more of agnostic. I have no proof that there is a God.
You can't be agnostic about God. You know why? Because you got to make ethical decisions every day, and your ethics tattle what you believe about reality. Because you have to determine whether a person.
That's a wild claim. You cannot be agnostic about God because what you have to make ethical decisions every day. Why would that mean you can't be agnostic about God's existence?
Is valuable or not?
God.
Yeah, but when you make a decision that's ethical,
so if you have no, I gotta stop you. We're gonna go to this point. If you're gonna make that kind of style of argument, if someone can make an ethical decision about God, why do they need God to form an ethical decision?
If you are convinced that something is ethical versus unethical, you are into objective morality, objective ethics. The only way.
Wait, what did he say? If you think, sometimes I gotta. What?
If you are convinced that something is ethical versus unethical, you are into objective morality.
That just doesn't follow. I mean, just compare. You know the comparison I'm going to make. You already know the comparison. If you are convinced that some food tastes good and some food tastes bad, you are already in gastronomic realism. Obviously not. No. There is no, zero, zilch, zippo inconsistency between having first order normative stances, attitudes, positions, evaluations, judgments about what's morally good or bad, and not being a moral realist. There's just no inconsistency for exactly the same reason you could think food is good or bad without having to be a realist about food being good or bad. You can just make judgments about what's good or bad or what you should or shouldn't do. You do not have to be a realist about those sorts of things. So if someone says, I should go to the bank, it's not like they have reasons to go to the bank independent of their goal standards or attitudes. Maybe they want to go to the bank to get some money to buy a ticket to go see a concert. Okay. There's no rule or obligation that they have external to their own values mandating that they do that. So when they say they should go to the bank, that would probably make better sense if understood from like a hypothetical imperative type perspective. I don't like to reify those and say that like, because you want to go to the bank, you ought to go to the bank, as though the desire generates an ought. It's, for me, just a roundabout way of describing the relation between your goals and the means of acting in accord with or achieving those goals. It's all descriptive facts. So in that case, it would be really weird to think that you have to be a realist because you're talking about shoulds and shouldn'ts or goods and bads. Just transpose exactly that type of reasoning over to morality. No problem. There are differences between the way people frequently think about morality or typically think about morality and how they think about prudential or practical considerations like, having a good job or tying your shoes so you don't trip over yourself. It's not morally you should tie your shoes. It's practically or prudentially you should tie your shoes. It's not a good idea to go around tripping up over yourself, right? But in those cases, it'd be really weird to say that you should tie your shoes independent of whether it would serve your interest or not. That's weird. There I go saying stuff is weird. It wouldn't be a particularly defensible view, I don't think. And the same for taste preferences and the same for morality. There is just no good reason to think if people are engaged in moral judgment that they've got to be moral realists. And this is one of the most common things you'll see of people on Twitter. You'll see this from people all over the place where they just seem to think you're making moral judgments, got to be a realist, or this doesn't even slightly increase the probability that you're a realist unless we have some reason. Like if you're talking about the possibility space, maybe it could then. Because at the very least, you're not like a non-fictionalist error theorist if you're explicitly making a moral judgment. But it's not at all clear that we know like what the base rates within any given population are of the realists and the anti-realists such that we know that the rates of like realists making normative claims are higher than the rates of anti-realists? Like, I don't know how is that going to be established? Then if we already know that, then we already know what people are. So we don't even need to establish it for some new person. And the bottom line is we don't know the rates of realism and anti-realism among the population. So, and you also don't want to reason backwards and think, well, this is the sort of thing you would say if you're a realist and not if you're an anti-realist. And then use that to make inferences about the base rate. So unless you have independent evidence supporting that realists are more likely to say or do or render certain kinds of judgments, things that anti-realists are, by hypothesis, less likely to say or do or whatever, unless you already have that data, you're not in a position to say, well, realists are more likely to say this than anti-realists are. That hasn't been demonstrated. So people are constantly making these claims that border on empirical claims, and they don't have any empirical data to support their claims, or at least not very good empirical data. Oh, right.
Objective ethics. The only way. Now, stop interrupting me. I listen to you. Now you listen to me. All right. So, if there are objective ethics, it means there has to be a mind to define that.
That's ethics.
If there's objective ethics, there has to be a mind to define it. Is that exactly what he said?
Anyway, now stop interrupting
Caption line.
me. I listen to you. Now you listen to me. All right. So, if there are objective ethics, it means there has to be a mind to define that.
Where is he getting this from? Nothing about there being objective ethics logically entails that there has to be a mind to define them. That just doesn't follow. So you have all these secular accounts of moral realism, which hold that there are facts about what's morally right or wrong that don't depend on anybody's attitudes, values, desires, preferences, or anything like that. Insofar as, look, I have my issues with those positions, but one issue I do not have is that I look at them and I go, no, that's impossible. You couldn't have that unless there was a mind to define what is right and wrong. That's not a feature of the conceptual content of what moral realism is positing. It's positing that there's facts about what's right or wrong, or good or bad, morally speaking, that don't depend on anybody's attitudes or stances. There doesn't need to be a mind to define them. That's weird. That's a very weird claim.
Once again, that's like just going, again, I'm a moral anti-realist.
So whoever posted this video threw up look, is that from Wikipedia or something? Moral anti-realism is a meta-ethical position that denies the existence of objective moral values or facts. In simpler terms, it means that moral statements like murder is wrong are not inherently true or false in the way that factual statements like this round are considered to be. Inherently true or false. That's a very weird way to phrase it. Instead, moral anti-realists believe that moral claims are either not capable of being true or false, or they're only true relative to something else, like individual opinions or cultural norms. Bit of an oversimplification, but not a terrible definition. It's leaving out stance-dependent cognitivist accounts that are not relativistic. So it's leaving out constructivism, ideal observer theory, maybe some type of anti-realist subjectivist account of divine command theory, any type of relation designating account. And then that's also giving the impression that maybe that relativism isn't necessarily an anti-realist position, which is also not true. That moral sentences contain implicit indexicals that allow the truth status of the claims to vary is conceptually distinct from whether or not the claims are made true by stances. So it's a point I point out in every video. People are constantly mixing the two up. Relativism and stance to independence and dependence, those are different dichotomies.
I don't believe there is like an objective ethical system.
Okay, fine. Live it out.
I don't think you can create one. I don't think I can create one.
No, you can't live out. You're an intellectual.
Yeah, so Cliffe says this a lot. He says, live it out. You can't live it out. So if you're an anti-realist, what's the problem with living out? So you can do whatever you want. You just don't think that there's stance-independent moral facts. As long as you're not acting as if there's stance-independent moral facts, which even if you thought that there were, that wouldn't necessarily entail any difference in your behavior unless you endorse motivational internalism. So this idea that you should live it out. Cliffe often seems to characterize anti-realist positions as that the only position that you can have if you're not a moral realist is to think that each individual or group fixes what's morally right or wrong for them to do in such a way that everybody else has to be on board with that and endorse it. So if someone, down the street thinks it's okay to torture people, it's okay for them to torture people in a way that this should be relevant to you. That's not an entailment of denying moral realism. This is a particular type of relativism called agent relativism, which holds that moral facts are made true or false by the standards of the agent performing the action. So you don't have to endorse that as a anti-realist. And if you deny moral realism, it doesn't entail that type of anti-realism. One moment. Give me 1 second. All right. Sorry about that. Okay.
Hypocrite. Because you can't live out moral relativism. You can't live as if.
So he says you can't live out moral relativism. There's a difference between being a moral anti-realist and being a moral relativist. I am a moral anti-realist. That's the position that there are no stance-independent moral facts. That does not entail moral relativism. Moral relativism, there's different types of moral relativism, but roughly speaking, moral relativism holds that the truth of moral claims can vary in accord with the standard to which those moral claims are indexed. Kind of like how the statement, I am Lance, is true when I say it, and it's false when someone who's not Lance says it. The moral relativist, when a person that's okay with murder says murder is okay, then it's true relative to their standards. And then if a person, this would be some type of agent relativism, a person that doesn't think murder is okay, when they say murder is not okay, that's also true relative to their standards. Actually, maybe the way I describe that would be consistent with appraiser relativism as well. But the point would just be that for relativist cases, what's essential to them is the way that we analyze moral sentences. And a sentence like torturing people for fun is wrong. That sentence can be true when some people make the claim and false when other people make the claim, because those people are implicitly indexing different standards. So imagine you're watching two people sit down to try pineapple pizza. Neither of them have ever had it. Maybe they are time travelers or something. They both take a bite, and then you ask one of them, what did you think? And they go, this is delicious. This is one of the best things I've ever eaten. And then the other person goes, this is disgusting. I absolutely hate this. Now, are those claims logically contradictory? No, they're not logically contradictory. Why? Well, it would make sense to interpret the first person as making a claim about their own preferences and the second person to be making a claim about their own preferences. Neither of them is making a claim about the other's preferences. And so they're both, notice the grammatical structure. This is delicious. This is disgusting. Neither of them is saying, I find this to be delicious. I find this to be disgusting. But if they did, it would immediately make clear how this is not contradictory. So, imagine the first person is Alex, and Alex says, I, Alex, find this pizza delicious. And then the second person says, I, Sam, find this pizza disgusting. So then you have those two sentences. I, Alex, find this pizza delicious. I, Sam, find this pizza disgusting. Any logical contradiction? No. That is what relativism is about. It's about understanding the indexicalization of moral sentences. That's just about it. Now, agent relativism is weird because arguably it bleeds into and carries these normative moral implications in a way that appraiser relativism does not. So appraiser relativism holds that when you make moral claims, they're right or wrong relative to, or sorry, not when you make moral claims, that whether a moral claim is true or false depends on the standards of whoever's evaluating the claim. And that could be me or that could be you. And this doesn't carry this implication. So, someone from some other society says it's okay to torture people, where I judge whether it's right or wrong relative to my standards. I think it's not okay to torture people. I don't care if they think it's okay to torture people. That's how an appraiser relativist looks at this sort of thing. It allows the relativist, in this case, to not have to respect or tolerate other people with different moral standards. All right. So, one moment. Okay, so let's keep going with the video. So Cliffe is just wrong here. He is presuming that if you're not a realist, you're a relativist. That doesn't follow. I think he is implying that if you're a relativist, you're an agent relativist. That doesn't follow. So we have a whole, onion of mistakes here.
Cliffe respecting this guy.
That's between moral and anti-realist.
Of course you are. Come
Explain how I'm a
on.
moral.
You know very well that if I love this guy today and hate him tomorrow.
Yes, that's because my own moral axiomatic.
That's right. You are so intellectually inconsistent that you insist that for me to murder him is wrong versus me to respect him is right.
Sorry. Give me one moment. Got it. Okay. I had an issue that I had to address really quickly. And I can't talk. I had an issue I had to address. It just got addressed. So now I'm good. Sorry about that. Yeah, when you're coordinating a lot of stuff, it's challenging to do a stream without any interruptions at all. Okay. Let me take that back because I got distracted. And let me have a look at the chat real quick. Frank Pickle says, on what basis do you reject other people's moral standards? You could just not endorse their moral standards. For the same reason, I could just reject other people's taste preferences. I don't have to endorse a person's taste preferences. Like I endorse that it is their taste preference, but I don't have to act on it. So if someone else really loves, I don't know, pickle flavored ice cream, that doesn't sound great to me, I don't have to eat it. I could slap it out of their hand if I don't want them to eat it. I could just act on my preferences and values. I don't have to endorse other people's preferences. All right.
Tomorrow.
Yes, that's because of my own moral axiomatic.
That's right. Cliffe respecting this guy.
That's between moral
Yeah,
anti-realist.
Of course
okay, I
you
missed more
are.
than I thought.
You can create one. I don't think I can create one.
No, you can't.
Once again, that's like just going again. I'm a moral anti-realist. I don't believe there is like an objective ethical system.
Okay, fine. Live it out.
I don't think you can create one. I don't think I can create one.
No, you can't live out. You're an intellectual hypocrite because you can't live out moral relativism. You can't live as if Cliffe respecting this guy.
That's between moral anti-realist.
Of course you are. Come on.
Explain how I'm a
You
moral.
know very well that if I love this guy today and hate him tomorrow,
Yes, that's because of my own moral axiomatic.
that's right. You are so intellectually inconsistent that you insist that for me to murder him is wrong versus me to respect him is right. But if your morality is relative and you're going to be intellectually consistent,
Again, I'm not a moral relativist.
yes, you are.
Yeah, so this is a serious slip from Cliffe. So this person is being very explicit, very clear. They're not a moral relativist. They're a moral anti-realist. And Cliffe is just, and this is Cliffe. I hope you see this. That's rude. That's rude and that's wrong. You should not be telling people what their beliefs are as if you know better than them. You wouldn't appreciate it, and you wouldn't respect, care, or respond very well if I said you're not a Christian. You're not a Christian. You wouldn't take that seriously because you know what your beliefs are. And if you believe you're a Christian, and I just said no, you're not, you would just be dismissive of that. I'm an anti-realist. I am not, and by the way, Cliffe, I'm an atheist and an anti-realist. I am not a moral relativist, and it's up to me in a conversation if someone else is going to be respectful. Now, Cliffe, most of the time, I don't know why I'm addressing him directly. You try to be respectful to people. It is not respectful to tell people that they're not what they say they are, that they don't believe what they say they believe, that they believe what you say that they believe. You are not typically going to be in a better position to know what someone thinks or believes than they do. And on the topic of metaethics, you're not a specialist. You're not an expert. And I doubt that you understand the topic well enough to be so confident that you can declare what someone's position is over and above what they themselves are trying to tell you. It's first of all, you don't have any philosophical defensive basis for saying this. And second, it's kind of rude. Not that makes you wrong, but you're both wrong and being a bit rude here. Not cool. And I don't like that. I don't like that you did that. That's not a nice thing to do to somebody.
Explain how I'm a moral relativist.
Because you're an atheist. You have to be a moral relativist.
Yeah. So if you're an atheist, it does not follow that you have to be a moral relativist. I don't even know why this would need to be said. Atheism is consistent with pretty much any form of moral realism, unless, any metaethical position, moral realism or anti-realism, unless it depends in some way on the existence of God.
Because atheist is someone who says there's no mind prior to the human mind who defines right and wrong.
Am I a coffee lover too because I'm an atheist? Is everything because I'm an atheist?
Life is real, and you got to make ethical decisions. So get real and acknowledge you choose to pay your taxes or not pay your taxes. Is it not possible that you're viewing yourself as valuable is because of a high caffeine rush from your coffee this morning?
That's an interesting
Answer it.
I guess what I would say is, how am I sure that I am? So let me re-clarify. How am I sure?
If you're asked a direct question and it's not like a loaded question or something like that, answer the question first every time. If it's a yes or no question and you're going to give a yes or no, just say yes or no right at the beginning. Everybody gets frustrated when a person does not immediately give a yes or no response to a yes or no question because it looks like you're evading answering the question, even if you're not. So if someone says, is this possible? Just say yes and then elaborate, or no and then elaborate. No reason to evade answering the question. And if you have a problem with a yes or no, say, I don't think that's a legitimate question. Here's my problem with the question. Here's why I can't give a yes or no to that. And obviously this would work for certain questions. Like if someone said, have you stopped stealing money from or embezzling funds from the company you work at or something? You don't have to say yes or no to that. You could say that's a loaded question and it's like a trap question. I'm not answering yes or no to that. And that's a legitimate response. So if the answer isn't yes or no, say that and then say why immediately. Don't bury the lead and not get clear with what you're going to say.
That I have value, and it's not just because I drank caffeine this morning.
Right.
My simple answer would be is that I also feel value when I don't drink caffeine. If you want like the basic
This is a weird digression. I don't think this is getting us anywhere.
answer to like what you directly asked me. If you want, once again, the actual free supposition for the actual argument. My belief that human life is innately valuable is, once again, a moral axiom. It does have no realist definition. Again, I'm a moral anti-realist.
So then if tomorrow you feel you're a piece of trash, that's true for you?
If you're talking in that instance, no.
Why not just say yes? Yeah, if I'm a relativist and I thought I was a piece of trash, it would be true I'm a piece of trash. If by I'm a piece of trash, it being true just means that that's my attitude that I have towards myself. You could say that. That's not a problem. It's not a super nice thing to say about yourself, and I don't encourage people to do it. But if your statement reflects your preferences or your attitude, and that's your attitude, then your attitude is trivial. Like the statement "I am an X" is trivially true if it's an expression of your attitude, and that is your attitude. It's an unfortunate attitude to have. I hope nobody feels that way.
Okay, you have beliefs that are broad and grounded. Would you say you have any beliefs you hold that you consistently hold that aren't explicitly written in the Bible?
Many.
Yeah, this is not a good question to ask because Christians aren't committed to the, at least most of them don't think they're committed in any way to thinking that their moral standards have to be explicitly written in the Bible. I don't think are there different types of revelation? Not all revelation has to come directly from the Bible.
Okay. Why do you have those beliefs?
Because God has given me a rational mind, and by exercising my rational mind, I can follow evidence in science, math, psychology, literature, history. I don't believe George Washington was the first president of the United States because the Bible says so.
That's a perfectly good response from Cliffe. Yeah, I don't know where the person talking to him is going with this, and his response is a perfectly reasonable one.
The Bible doesn't mention George Washington. I study history, the trustworthiness of eyewitness testimony, and that's why I'm convinced George Washington was the first president of the United States. I am convinced that Muhammad was a real person. And if anybody wants to tell me Muhammad is a myth, I'm going to tell them they're out to lunch. Why? Because the overwhelming historical evidence is Muhammad was a real person. The same thing with Jesus Christ. He was a real historical person. That's why I believe that stuff, because I got a mind.
I am an atheist. I do believe Jesus was a historical figure. You don't got to worry.
Why do you trust your mind? In light of the fact that your reason comes from non-reason, if you're an atheist, why do you trust your mind?
In the case of why do I trust my mind, I would just cite Descartes and just say I am because I think I am because I can say I am.
Well, that's one blind leap. How do you know that your thinking ties you into reality? Einstein said the biggest miracle is that my brain can connect with reality. That is a miracle.
So I don't think this is a great question for Cliffe to ask. It's extremely difficult for somebody to respond to that question in real time. Most people that are approaching him are not going to be prepared to offer some sort of elevator pitch for a particular epistemological framework. What I would struggle to answer that question. I might start saying, well, I'm a pragmatist and I take a pragmatist approach to things. It wouldn't even be what am I going to do? Give the elevator pitch in 1 or 2 minutes? It's probably something I should practice, but this would be a very, very tough question for anybody to answer, even if they were an epistemologist. So it's just a tough question to answer in the context in which the social norms wouldn't allow for an essay length monologue. So I don't like the question. Sapir says, why does he speak like that? What do you mean? Why does he speak like what? Describe it.
If you notice, many animals' minds don't tie them into reality in many situations. Some situations, yes, but other situations, no. The deer that I hit with my car accidentally made a poor decision. He ran in front of my car. Not good. I don't think anybody here would run in front of cars. So why do you trust your mind if your mind is simply a highly developed monkey's brain? Do you trust the thoughts of a monkey?
Oh my God. Okay, I had to pause there. Glasses off moment. Oh my Lord. Lord have mercy. I think if Jesus is real, at this point, if Jesus is real, I don't mean if he was real historically. I mean if he still is alive and exists and is God and stuff. I think he would have showed up and been like, dude, he would have been like, bro, dude, what do you trust your monkey brain? Does this even deserve commentary? My God. Do I trust the thoughts of a monkey? Yeah. Sure. Frank Pickle says, I trust the thought of all monkeys. You gotta trust all monkeys. Yeah, Sapir is describing his tone. Remember, Sapir had said, why does he speak like that? I mean, like the tone and cadence, how he speaks, it sounds really hostile. Not sure if hostile is the right word, but it's odd. Yeah, so he has these strong gestures with his body language. He noticed that he doesn't just look directly at the person, but he's scanning the crowd and he's pitching what he's saying to the crowd as a whole. It's like if you had like the cone of aggression of a monster in a game, it's turning and like giving a good, like, as he's like strafing people with his voice. It's probably some sort of technique. I don't know how intentional or automatic it is that he's internalized over the years. But my guess is that his mannerisms, his tone, and that sort of thing is intended to, because he's speaking in front of an audience, there's a performative element to it, and he's performing for the audience. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that he's projecting in a way that will make sure everybody watching the discussion is hearing the discussion. He's not just having that one-on-one where he's just locked onto the person. And I don't see anything inappropriate about that. It's, to me, it comes off as a bit performative, but so what? I don't see a problem with that. It does come off as a bit, like, what I don't like about it is, Sapir, I actually do think it comes off as a bit hostile. I would not enjoy this type of exchange. To me, I'm going to be honest here, it comes off as condescending. Every time he responds, his tone and his mannerisms is always didactic, like he is the teacher and you're the stupid idiot that needs to be taught a lesson. That's the vibe that he gives to me. There is no sense of like status equality between him and the people that he's talking to in these sorts of exchanges. I don't like that. I prefer not to talk to people that way. I don't even talk to my dog that way most of the time anyway. Like if I'm like, no, but if my dog did that to me, I'm like, you're not in charge of me. But yeah, I don't like it. Zachman says, wait, what? Why are you reacting to such low fruit? I addressed that at the beginning of the video. So go watch the beginning of the video. Daniel Robertson says he's showing he's in charge with his body language, basically. I think there's some truth to that. It reminds me, so Sapir says, it reminds me of the way ancient Athenian speakers were described in the very short introduction of rhetoric by the Oxford University Press: loud, chest-puffing, exaggerated gesturing. Okay, I got real excited as I was reading that. Has anyone here seen HBO's Rome? Because there's this actor that plays the same person that like provides the news. Like I think he would unroll scrolls and read them off. And he had these gestures. If someone can find a video from HBO's Rome of that guy, it does remind me of that. And you're absolutely right. It does. I mean, you're saying Athenian speakers, but I think a lot of the Romans went over to Greece to learn rhetoric and probably oratory. I don't know, from them. Like, didn't Cicero do that? Didn't Julius Caesar get jealous of Cicero doing that? And then Julius Caesar went over and then he was captured by pirates? Something like that. There was a whole story behind that. I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it was something like that. Yeah. I think it's the story about, whatever. I'm not going to digress for that. So there's this really cool podcast called The History of Rome. Back in the day, this is back when I was my first round through grad school, I was just looking for podcasts that had decent audio quality, and I wasn't super into history, and I came across that. I think the person that creates its name is Mike Duncan, and it just had great audio quality. So I started listening to The History of Rome, and he just presented everything in these bite-sized 20, 30-minute episodes. of going over the whole history from their like its founding, like its mythical founding, you know, Romulus and Remus and all that stuff. Well, actually, even earlier than that, to like through the Republic, well, through the Kingdom, then the Republic, then the Empire, and all that stuff. I think there's also a podcast on the Byzantine Empire, so you can kind of continue the story. Not, I don't think it's from him though. Anyway, it ended up just being really fascinating. I was like, oh, I like history more than I thought I did. And then I listened to a couple other history things. He has another one called Revolutions, where he covers various revolutionary wars. I think they don't all have to be wars, but like the really long one is the French Revolution. There's just so much that happened and so much that's documented. But he covers a lot of other ones, like all the revolutions in Latin America, the Haitian Revolution. That series is it's phenomenal. It's probably technically better than History of Rome, but I love History of Rome. Anyway, he's great. I think he's doing some new thing. I think it's like a fictional revolution on Mars, like in the future or something. Maybe that's not your cup of tea, but it sounds cool, and I haven't listened to it. It's an absolutely wonderful podcast. He's just very good at the way he speaks. Okay. Zachman says, okay, I will go. I'm not trying to send you away. So the Knechtles were on my campus some time ago. So it makes sense to address people that are like talking to college students and potentially having a big influence on them. I like this. The woman in white looking straight into the camera is my spirit animal. It's so funny. Like, it's just, yeah. So Pierce says, I listened to that History of Rome podcast years ago. I'm pretty sure. You don't even remember? It's great. Okay, let's keep going.
Is that for me or those stories of more?
For you.
Okay. Another fun question to talk about. In this case, I would once again just cite that as for my existence as a human being,
Yeah.
what I know is reality is what this process is. That is a fact for both you and me. What you know is reality is what this process is.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, in that instance, whatever mess of gray matter up here is processing is my reality in terms of what I perceive.
Right.
You can, of course, go further beyond that, which is where you get into like actual like society as a whole. But in the case of like, why do I think what I believe is correct?
Yeah.
Because it is the reality present to me, and my positions are mutable based upon evidence that could change said positions.
But if you believe that your mind comes from the irrational, if you believe that your reason comes from
by the irrational,
chaos. If there is no God, you believe that order came about by chance out of chaos. And part
just not true. If you don't believe in God, you think this. If you don't believe in God, you think this. Why don't you ask people what they think and why they think it, rather than just telling them what they think or what they have to think? This is such a domineering and an unnecessary and intellectually incurious approach to engaging with other people. It's really unpleasant. It's really not a kind or thoughtful or philosophically defensible or socially defensible way of talking to other people. This is I mean, it's intellectually bankrupt. And look, I don't like to be so harsh, but this is an awful way to talk to people. It's domineering. It's honestly a bit pompous. Just telling people what they think. This is ridiculous. This is embarrassing. This is an embarrassing way to talk to people, to just tell people what they think. I don't go around telling Christians stuff like, as a Christian, you believe in a logically incoherent notion of the Trinity, and you think it's logically incoherent, and you are a hypocrite for going around saying that as a Christian, you think the world is coherent and God's required for coherence, but then you believe something you know is incoherent. I could go around talking to people like that, and Christians wouldn't take it seriously. And they'd be right not to take it seriously, because I'd be speaking for them and on their behalf. That's not a way to reach other people or talk to them. If you're sincerely interested in changing people's minds in a way that is really reaching those people and changing their minds for good reasons. Like maybe if you intellectually or socially bulldoze a person, you can cause them to doubt their position and maybe reconsider yours. That's not the way you should be handling people. It's not cool what he's doing. It's not just that he's wrong. It's that he's wrong in a way that I find abrasive and highly, highly unappealing.
that means You believe that the rational mind that you so treasure because you're very articulate, you obviously think, but you believe that this mind that you treasure so highly is a cosmic accident. There is a breakdown there.
Do you believe it's impossible for
Okay. Okay. I'll leave my comment to myself. I'm not going to pick it.
anything complex to be like created by accident? Is that what you're trying to argue?
I'm saying the rational does not come from the non-rational. Order does not come from chaos. If you're an athlete, you know very well that your success in athletics is not because you just happen to be accidentally lucky and put the ball in the goal.
Look how he's not talking to the person. He's just turning and looking at the audience and talking to them. Never mind. Too much meta commentary, but the image is great. He's talking to the audience, but there's something like the way he's walking. It's very deliberate, slow walk. It looks like someone pacing on a stage while they're giving a sermon. It does come off as very performative.
Unless you're Michael Phelps. That guy was a genetic freak. Or is a genetic freak. He's still alive.
Yeah, he also worked very, very hard to become the
also
best
has,
swimmer in the
like,
world.
For those who don't know about Michael Phelps, the dude is literally a genetic freak.
Wait,
I mean, the guest here that he's talking to, they're trying to be casual. I think there's something that could be somewhat effective about it. But when you're talking to Cliffe, you should remain focused. I think if you really, I mean, maybe that's not maybe their objective is just to have a friendly chat, and that's fine. If now they're turning to the audience talking about Michael Phelps. But if you're trying to pin him down, I wouldn't deviate. You got to stay focused. And you could see from this conversation, it's meandering, it's all over the place. If you watch philosophical discussions between people that are not trained or don't train themselves, you'll see that they have this meandering, bouncy quality where they don't stay focused on anything.
Is Michael Phelps coach here?
Yeah,
He coaches here.
He coaches here at UT. Okay, so Michael Phelps coaches here at UT. So
okay,
I can promise you, Michael Phelps didn't go around saying to a homeless person, "Hey, would you please coach me in swimming? I want to make it to the Olympics." No, he got one of the finest coaches, and you guys still have him here at UT. And I can promise you the coach doesn't say, "Oh, do whatever you want to do, and maybe you'll make the Olympics." No, they drill these guys hard. And you don't become a postdoc student in mathematics because you sort of just flitted and flirted away going to party after party. You got to grill your brain, discipline it. So don't give me this gibberish.
I'm willing to bet quite a few graduate students and postdocs went to a bunch of parties.
That order and design come about by chance. Don't give me this gibberish that the rational mind is the result of the irrational. That's stupid. For me, the policy is I resent his talents. I resent his...
For those who don't know about Michael,
You'll make the Olympics. No. Grill your brain. Mind.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so we finished that video. Let's have a look at the next video. Let's see, where's that? Not really much to say about that. I mean, it's a standard sort of fare that you get from people that they'll say that if you're an atheist, then you think order arises from disorder and blah blah blah. And like, there's good things that atheists. I mean, first of all, that's not entailed, and none of that is entailed by atheism. Atheists are just people that believe gods don't exist or that don't believe gods do exist. They could have totally wonky metaphysics. They don't have to be naturalists. They don't have to be empiricists. They don't have to be physicalists. They don't have to be any of those things. But all of those views are going to have answers to questions about like, does order arise out of disorder? That yes, like locally, but you have stuff related to entropy and how on average things are going to move towards a state of disorder. So they're really just not going to have problems addressing these sorts of claims. But sometimes people that are opposed to humans being a product of natural selection will say that we arose by chance, and that's a big misunderstanding. Even if we want to describe the process of random mutations arising as being random, as being a chance matter, that does not mean that the selection process itself is a matter of chance. Like which organisms have greater reproductive fitness or not is not random. So it's just a misunderstanding. It's a very basic misunderstanding. It's one that's been addressed a bazillion, trillion times. And some people just keep making the same mistake and keep making the same sorts of assertions. But what he's saying here is so vague and underdeveloped, it's hard to even assess it. Okay. Oop, one moment. So I don't know if you all know, but I have a white noise that I run. I have a white noise that I run because I have really, really, really bad tinnitus, and sometimes it'll change to a different sound, and I have to go and fix it. All right, let's look at this one. Whoop, let me get a full screen. Okay. Are you all ready? Well, let me have a look at the comments first. Ben says, people like Cliffe never explain why it's impossible for non-rational processes to produce rational beings. Yep, there's no problem with non-rational processes producing rational beings. Hien says, I think what consistently impresses me the most about your material is the patience you exhibit watching these style of videos without banging your head into the wall. I actually did bang my head into the wall a few days ago, and I have a bump on top of my head. I don't know if it's visible, but it wasn't because of these videos. It was because it was actually funny. So I now have a basement again. I keep moving. And it's one of those ones like that, well, I won't get into the details, but it's one of those ones where, you know, there's like that part that comes down and you have to duck. And I'm pretty tall, so I have to duck a lot. And I was walking down the stairs, naturally doing my thing. I've already habituated myself to duck and crouch as you go down the stairs. I was halfway down the stairs, and I suddenly did this, you know, when you're like, like I suddenly decided I had a thought, and I went, and immediately hit my head because I stopped. I was right under the spot with that, you know how like the stairs, it goes down like that, right? And then there's that spot that's like a rectangular corner, right? So as you're going down, if I went up at one point, like before it, it would be fine. And if I went up after, it'd be fine. But I'm right at that spot, and I go, and hit my head like an idiot. Really ridiculous. It wasn't very hard because I only had like an inch or two. So fortunately, I wasn't like full on concussed rolling down the stairs, but it wasn't great. But thank you. Yeah. I think I've developed more patience for this over time. Often people are surprised, like, how do you have the patience with all this? Why wouldn't I? It feels very natural to me to be patient with this stuff. Hunter Biden says, part of the problem in the whole grown man professional fairy tale philosopher ambushes college campuses to debate undergrads dynamic, there needs to be more social pushback. Ick. Yeah, that people can often go overboard with that. So, you know, there used to be a street preacher that went by where, you know, my undergrad. Oh, I think I just hit caps lock. What just happened there? Okay. And people were very rude to them, and I thought it was unnecessary. We got this one. It seems there's some evidence that guilt is an effective tool for compliance. This is with respect to Knechtle's accusatory approach. Maybe there's something in that, though I don't like it. Yeah, neither do I. He says the irony is that order arising from disorder isn't even particularly physically contentious. Order arising from disorder is what we observe. Yeah, like crystals forming and stuff. Like what is the problem here exactly? You know, any type of homeostasis in a living organism. What exactly is the problem? All right, that's everybody to quote now. Let's move on to the next video.
We talked just a bit
I can't hear
last
anything.
night about the power. We talked just a bit last night about the powerful reality of what your father introduced in his book, Right from Wrong. This whole concept of moral relativism and relativism today. And it seems like that is our biggest problem that the Christians face is how do you speak to relativistic thinking in that there is no truth except what each person believes is truth.
So there's no truth except what you believe is. Let me make sure I got exactly what was said.
Thinking, and that there is no truth except what each person believes is truth.
Okay, so I didn't see an explicit reference to morality there, unless I was really not paying attention. I'm a goofy person. Let me take it back a bit. I just want to be sure I'm getting this right.
That is our
I think more
biggest
relativism
problem
for
that the Christians face is how do you speak to relativistic thinking in that there is no truth except what each person believes is truth.
Okay, just a general point. There's a difference between moral relativism and then some more global relativism, where you're just a relativist about all truth. So, if someone mentions moral relativism and then they just start talking about relativism in a general sense, sometimes, and I'm not saying this person has mixed the two up, sometimes people will mix them up and they'll talk about, this is why I was going back. I was like, I thought there was reference, I think it's the first 10 seconds, to moral relativism. It's going to bug me unless I hear it. Sorry,
We talked just a bit last night about the powerful reality of what your father introduced in his book, Right from Wrong.
Right from
this
Wrong.
whole concept of moral
relativism
believes
See, so
is true.
there's a big difference between thinking morality in particular is relative and then thinking truth is relative in a general sense. So just keep that distinction in mind in case it ends up getting mixed up in the video.
And so how do we, I feel like we don't want to be just asking questions alone, but really being prepared to give an answer for the hope that is in us. And so how do you, yeah, okay, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you for that. So my dad wrote a book called Right from Wrong around 25 years ago or so, and argued that our culture is deeply relativistic. You have your moral truth and I have mine. I think culture's kind of shifted from then. It's not kind of a live to each his own culture anymore. It's, if you don't agree with this, we're going to shame you and call you out and tell you you're immoral and harmful and hurtful. At least a significant.
Yeah, so that's consistent with being a moral relativist. At least it's consistent with being an appraiser relativist, maybe less so an agent relativist.
Significant amount of voices will address issues that way, which tells me you're immoral and harmful and hurtful. At least.
Okay, give me a second. I got distractions upstairs. Give me a second. Sorry about that.
To each his own culture anymore. It's, if you don't agree with this, we're going to shame you and call you out and tell you you're immoral and harmful and hurtful. At least a significant amount of voices will address issues that way, which tells me no one is really a relativist.
Oh boy. It does not follow that if people condemn other people or make moral judgments or so on and so forth, that they are not really moral relativists. Absolutely nothing about moral relativism entails that one should not, would not, could not, make moral judgments. They could make moral judgments in a box. They can make them with a fox. They can make them in a train. They can make them on a plane. There's just no inconsistency. Again, it matters what type of relativism you're talking about, but moral relativism does not mean that you don't make any moral judgments or don't care about what other people do. It just doesn't entail that. That's not what the view is. That relativism is a category of views. Some of them are going to create some issues in some circumstances for some people, making judgments of others in some circumstances. But many of the other ones, like appraiser relativism, simply carry no implications like that at all. Just none whatsoever. So weird for people to describe relativism in this way. This idea that if you don't think morality is objective and you do think morality depends on your attitudes, that you wouldn't make judgments or something. It's real strange. I don't know where this is coming from.
And no one ever was a relativist. Now, people are told that each have their own moral truth, because this is sometimes the cultural waters we swim in, so to speak. But everybody's made in the image of God and lives in the world in which God created. And part of being human is we have a moral conscience, Romans 2. So think about like a beach ball. If you take a beach ball and you push it underwater, what's going to happen? You guys are like, we don't have beach balls here in Minnesota. I'm kidding. What's a beach ball? If you push it underwater, it pops up, right? It takes a lot of force to hold it down because the nature of gravity and air, laws of physics. Bobbers, there you go. Fair enough. Yeah, bobbers. It takes a lot of force to push it underwater. Left to itself, it's going to pop up. Whenever somebody says they're a moral relativist, I never believe them. They think they are, but I'm going to.
Wow. They think they are. I mean, we're getting the same kind of thing. Now, this is Sean McDowell, right? Yeah, I'm just mixing up who people are. He's not as being quite as abrasive as Cliffe is, but just saying, yeah, when someone says they're this, I don't believe them. Just imagine I went around saying, when someone says they're a Christian, I never believe them. That, I think, would rightly come off as rude and presumptuous, and as a position that you would only hold if you have a very, very, very good reason to hold that position, or you don't respect other people enough to take them at their word. And I'm very sorry, but I think he's coming off as giving that vibe here. It's not appropriate or right or like factually correct to, like, a lot people that say they're relativists, some of them are relativists. So he's just wrong about this. There's also just who goes around just saying, yeah, nobody thinks this. He's not going to have good reasons for thinking nobody thinks this way.
Look for the beach ball to pop up. And there's only a matter of time before it will. I'll give you two examples. I was having a debate on stage with an atheist. I think it's 2018, 2019. And his whole focus is to point out things that he thinks is immoral that Christians do. And I said, wait a minute, where do you get objective right and wrong from? And his answer was kind of, he didn't think there's objective right and wrong. And I said, your whole focus is to point out, is to show that Christians are wrong. He goes, well, I'm just pointing out hypocrisy. And I said, because you think hypocrisy is morally wrong. You can't escape it. If we should point out hypocrisy and say it's bad, that's because we think it's morally wrong, which cries out for where we get moral duties and values from if there is no God. Maybe 15 years ago plus, I had a debate. You would love this, Jason. At our high school, I had some high school students when I was teaching full-time come to me at our Christian school. And they said, we went to this free-thinking atheist event at the public school in town, and 100 students showed up. What should we do? Well, we came up with the idea that we would host a debate at our church between 3 of their students, agnostic, atheist, skeptical students, and 3 of mine. And we hosted it. And it was on intelligent design, the historical Jesus, and morality. And one of my students got up there and she said, look, we all know there's right and wrong. We expect people to follow it. There's a moral law, and the best explanation is a moral lawgiver. She sat down. One of their students said, there is no moral law. There's no objective right and wrong. It's all subjective like ice cream or something to that effect. And then he sits down. And then it was time for the closing speech. And the same student who just said morality is like ice cream got up behind a podium, noticing he was in a church with a mostly Christian audience. He said, you know what? You guys are bigots. You're hateful. You're homophobic. Shame on you.
Yep. What's the inconsistency? So, like ice cream. So, let's say that I'm treating morality like my music preferences. And like, I like progressive metal and stuff like that. And I don't really like a lot of pop music. Maybe some of it I like. I don't like a lot of country music. There's not a genre of music I like super duper hate all of it. I can't think of one. I don't know. But just imagine there's a type of music I really, really hate. And there's a crowd of people that are all fans of that music. I could say, the music I like is great. The music you all like sucks. It's bad music. You like, some artist that sucks, and I don't like Drake's music. You all like I go to a Drake concert, right? And I get a microphone. I'm like, Drake's music sucks. His lyrics are bad. The music is terrible. You all have crappy preferences. Am I being inconsistent? Am I being hypocritical? Am I saying something inconsistent with being a subjectivist about music preferences? Not at all. So nothing about being a moral anti-realist or being a moral relativist in particular is in any way inconsistent with telling a group of people that you think that they're bigots or whatever. Now, that might be a rude thing to say, and it might not be accurate. Maybe the crowd who's talking to weren't bigots. But if they were, what's the inconsistency with saying, I'm a moral relativist, I'm against bigotry, this group of people are bigots, and I'm going to go yell at them about it? There isn't one. That's not an inconsistency. If you're a moral relativist, even if you're an agent relativist, you act on your standards and values. And what if on your standards and values, bigotry is wrong and bigots ought to be yelled at? Now you're acting in accord with your moral standards when you yell at the bigots. So for whatever reason, and notice that no one explicitly says relativism commits you to this. If you do X, Y, Z, then you are acting in a way that's inconsistent. Maybe some people do, but he's not saying that. It's all implied. It's implied. They don't lay out what the problem is supposed to be. the implication is that if you're a moral relativist, it makes no sense for you to be morally judging other people. How is that an implication of relativism? How? How? The answer is it isn't. It is not an implication of relativism that if you make any moral judgments at all, you're somehow contradicting your position. If that were true, then if you're a relativist or subjectivist about taste preferences, then if you make any statements at all about those preferences, are you contradicting yourself? So if I'm a gastronomic anti-realist or subjectivist, and I write a review, a Yelp review, and I say this restaurant sucks. The waiter was rude. The food took 45 minutes to come out. It was cold, and there was a hair in it. And they didn't want to give me a refund. They said I took 2 bites, so I already tried it. So, and that's when I found the hair after on the second bite. It wasn't visible. And I went, ugh, and I spit out the hair. And they said, too bad, pay in full. And I did, and I left, and I'll never go back there. This restaurant sucks. Bad food, bad service, gross and unhygienic. Now, do I have to be a realist about any of that? Absolutely not. Now, would I be a hypocrite or contradicting myself to go and write that as a Yelp review and then still say I'm subjectivist about what kind of food you like? No, I could say, well, if you know what, if you like slow service from rude people that don't give refunds when there's hairs in your food, you go enjoy that. I think it sucks. Or let's say I went to a restaurant and I just found the food is too spicy. And I'm like, yeah, look, the restaurant might be good. I don't like super spicy. It's actually not true. I like spicy food. But let's say I didn't like this super spicy food. And it's too spicy for me. I don't like it. And then I write that in a review. I give them 3.5 stars or 3 stars or whatever. I'm like, that's all right. The ambience was good. The service was good. I just didn't like the food. It's not for me. Am I contradicting myself? Do I have to be a gastronomic realist in order to write that review? No. This idea that you cannot judge things, you cannot express attitudes or feelings or sentiments or views or standards or positions or judge others or disagree with others or argue with others, unless you're a realist, is complete and total nonsense. It's just not true. People argue all the time about whether a movie was good. And if you pause those people, do they all have to be cinematic realists? No. Why? Well, people can appeal to intersubjective or shared standards. So if I go to a restaurant and I say the pasta is not good because they don't salt the water, they don't season it well, I don't have to be a gastronomic realist that thinks if you say, well, look, I actually don't like salty pasta. I like pasta without a lot of salt. I don't like it with a lot of seasoning. I like plain, boring mac and cheese. I would say you are factually incorrect. No, only the way I like pasta is the correct way to like pasta. You have to like it the way I like it. I'd say, okay, well, you like bland food. That's fine. That's your thing. Do your thing. Go enjoy your bland pasta. I don't care if someone likes bland pasta. But if I said that the food is bad, and so if someone said, do you think the food there is good? I'm not just going to go, well, I enjoyed the food there. Because they might be thinking, okay, I don't really care that much if you enjoyed the food there. They're asking if they would enjoy the food there. And if they and I are presupposing that we probably have pretty similar standards because we're humans with similar taste profiles, then when you say the food there is good, you're implying that they will find the food there to be good. It's an appeal to, I liked it. And because you probably like things roughly like the way I do, then you'll like it too. Intersubjective appeals. You do not need to be a realist to make judgments or appeal to other people's standards or attitudes. You just don't. It's just not true. It's just not true. And so it's very, very frustrating to see people confidently talk about this topic when what they're saying is incorrect. It's just wrong. What he's saying here is wrong. It's factually wrong. It's factually wrong in a way that there's not an interesting argument to have here. There isn't a legitimate alternative perspective to what I'm saying. If you disagree with me about this, you are wrong. You're just wrong. These are not implications of relativism. And, there are legitimate disputes to have within metaethics. This is not one of them. It's so common for people to describe metaethics in ways where they talk about anti-realist positions and they just say or imply things about them that are just not true. And it's exhausting, but I will keep dealing with it. And I'm just going to keep dealing with it. If I have to do 1,000 videos like this, and I don't know how many subscribers are going to have when that happens. I don't know how many people are going to be listening to me at that point. None of you in the chat right now are going to be there because you're going to be so after 1,000 of these videos, you're going to be so bored, you're not going to be coming back. I'll find a new audience if you don't want to be here. And it's totally understandable if you don't. This is my crusade. I want people to understand this characterization of morality is bogus. This realist stuff. They don't have good arguments for realism. It's almost entirely predicated on the popularity of misrepresentations of the implications of anti-realism and a bunch of bad arguments from analytic philosophers. Pretty much all they've got. Oof. Oof. Ben says, I'm actually making pasta right now. What kind of pasta are you making? We got like a pasta maker. We've made our own pasta before. Yeah, I'm a big pasta fan. Snake Oil Liniment, I think, gave this Nickelback as an example of a band that like I would be yelling at everybody about. I never thought Nickelback was that bad. Maybe I made jokes about it before. Maybe sometime I was caught by the bug of Nickelback sucks or something. Nickelback's not the worst band in the world. I don't know why that became so popular. There's just not. There's a lot worse music than Nickelback. I don't know why it's so popular to hate on them. I feel bad for them because, you know, I don't know. I just don't think they're that bad. People like to hate on Creed too. Christian band, I think, right? I don't hate Creed. People make fun of the guy's voice. I don't mind. He's got a distinctive voice. I don't care. All right. Anyway, Nickelback and Creed are not that bad. There's a lot worse. Drake's music is worse. I don't know anything about Drake personally. Maybe he's a very nice person. I don't know. Or maybe he's not. I have no idea. But I don't like his music. I think it's terrible. Usually my go-to example is that Drake is like the worst music I've ever heard. But I don't like Taylor Swift's music. I think that's bad. See, this is going to get people angry. I don't like Taylor Swift's music. But like there's a lot of popular music. I don't hate all of it. I don't know. Barilla elbow pasta with garlic, tofu, and seasoned with curry. I have a pot that has a strainer lid. What kind of curry are you doing? So I really like curry with pasta or other sorts of stuff added in it. I throw tofu in there. I don't think my wife likes tofu very much, but I put it in it when I make it for myself. But I really like coconut curry. You know, not just curry by itself. So I don't know what you're throwing in there, but it's for me, it's got to have coconut. I love coconut cream. Like just plop a whole bunch of that in there, and just like yeah, that's my thing. See, look at this. You did not just hate on Taylor Swift. I'm not hating on Taylor Swift. Again, I don't know anything about Taylor Swift. I don't follow these people's lives or know what's going on with them. Taylor Swift could donate $1 million to charity, be a wonderful, nice, friendly person. Taylor Swift could be an evil monster and hide bodies in her basement. I don't know. But I don't like the music. I just don't enjoy it. I don't think it's the worst music I've ever heard, but it sounds pretty meh to me. It's not my thing. Zictomorph says Creed is not specifically Christian, but hit on Christian spiritual topics. Okay, fair enough. I still remember. What is this? I don't remember this. I still remember Lance's Sabrina Carpenter rant. It's probably, what is that song? Espresso? Yeah, I don't know what the hell she's talking about in that song, and her diction is horrific, and I don't understand. It's all mumbly and muttery, and it's not good. I don't like her music. Yeah, okay, so that one's I don't care what you think of. Like, if you like Taylor Swift, great, enjoy Taylor Swift. I don't mind at all. It's not for me. But Sabrina Carpenter's music sucks. It's all her songs I've ever heard are awful, like really, really bad. And I don't understand anybody liking music. Also, I don't like that song because it's all about like manipulating men. Like she's got like a guy wrapped around her finger or something. I don't like, and she calls them boys. I don't like that. I don't know. I just don't like it. I don't like I don't like it. I don't like her music. If you throw some pop people at me, I could tell you whether I like the music or not if I've heard of it. Okay, so reflective journey. When you say that is objectively bad taste, are you saying liking Sabrina Carpenter would be bad taste, like her music, or that me saying I don't like it, that I have bad taste? You're not being clear. Ambiguity. There's a lot of ambiguity in this channel. Ben says just the off-the-shelf curry powder, but coconut curry sounds good. You got to get that coconut in there. Well, I mean, it has a trillion bazillion calories because I don't know if you know, but like coconut has like an insane amount of fat in it. So it's very calorically dense. So if you're going for calories, it's great. If you're not, might want to stay away. Yeah, just saying Swift doesn't help me. Like, do you mean not liking Taylor Swift? I don't think it's that good. So I'll tell you, I can mention some music. In fact, let me just pop up at Spotify and I can tell you about what music I like. Let's see, what do I got? First thing that pops up, probably because I listen to the most, is Tool and Opeth. Lately, I've been back on Alice in Chains. I've got Midlake in here. So Midlake is one of my favorites. The Courage of Others. I think that's the album name. I really like that album. And then what's the one after that? Yeah, The Courage of Others. And no, yeah. Is it Antiphon? I really like that one. What else do I have here? I Am Oak. I'm a big fan of I Am Oak. What else do I got? Nine Inch Nails. Twin Shadow. I like Twin Shadow. Electric Guest, but only the first album. I mean, there's a couple songs on later albums that I like, but the first album is really cool. I got Mad Season. I got some lo-fi stuff. Some of this I don't even know what it is. Some podcasts. Incubus. I like Incubus. What else we got here? Got more Midlake. I've been listening to a lot of Midlake. Oh, Cannons. I like Cannons. Glasser, who I guess nobody's ever heard of. Grimes. I listen to Grimes. System of a Down. I don't know how to say this. Yaima. I don't even know what genre of music that is, but I like it. Shearwater. What else we got here? There's some playlists that just says artists. I don't know. Danheim. I like Danheim. Fever Ray. What else we got? More podcasts. Oh, wow. More podcasts than I thought. Fat Freddy's Drop. I like that band. Riverside. I like Riverside. Eamon Tobin. All right, that's enough. That's my kind of music. Yeah, Cloud of Time says Tool good, Nine Inch Nails good, System of a Down good. Agreed. Do I like Primus? Yes, I do. Yeah, Primus is cool. It's a kind of a mood music for me, so it's not something I'm going to jam out to all the time. It's a little intense. Is that a Primus song? That Too Many Puppies song? It is. Too Many Puppies is a weird song. I enjoy it. So yeah, I like Primus. Cloud of Time knows about Eamon Tobin. Cool. And Snake says Thai green curry paste, can of coconut milk. Giddy up. Not coconut milk, coconut cream. I like the thick stuff. All right. Okay, that's a weird deviation to talk about music, but hey, whatever. Why not, right? Okay, let's get back into the video. And we're almost done with this one.
Do you notice anything odd? Now, I couldn't because I was like hosting it and I was the MC. But if I was one of the students, I would have walked up there and I would have said something effective. I want to thank my opponent for conceding the entire debate and admitting that there's a God. Because in the earlier speech, he said morality is all subjective. But then he just morally condemned all of you for being immoral, which only makes sense if there's a moral law, hence a God, dropped the mic, thank you, and walked off.
That would have been a terrible argument. You could totally condemn people without there being a God or without being a realist. This is nonsense.
That is the beach ball seeping its way up.
If you let go of a beach ball underwater, it doesn't seep up. That's just the wrong word to use. If you're going to use a metaphor, use it well. Give me a break.
I had a debate, if you remember Tony Campolo with his son, Bart Campolo is a friend of mine, and he argues that morality is subjective. And I was like, I'm not going to waste time. What about the Holocaust? And he obviously backtracked. Nobody wants to say that's okay.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. Ask about the Holocaust. Okay. If you're a moral anti-realist, you can think the Holocaust was morally wrong. So ask about the Holocaust, and he obviously backtracked because no one wants to say it's okay. If you're an anti-realist, you don't have to think the Holocaust was okay. What? Seriously, what on earth? Oh, why do people do this? It's not everybody has to be like an agent cultural relativist. And so agent cultural relativism would say, if the culture thinks an action is okay, then it's okay for members of that culture to perform the action. You do not have to endorse that if you're a relativist. You do not have to endorse that if you're an anti-realist. That is not an implication of rejecting moral realism or not believing in God. Not that he said specifically that. But you can be an appraiser relativist, and then you could judge what the Nazis did relative to your own moral standards. And then you could judge it to be morally wrong. Not a problem as a relativist, just not a problem.
Friends, people know there's right and there's wrong. So whenever somebody tells me this, I think they believe it. I'm not saying they're lying, but they don't really.
Yeah, okay. So I'm glad he added that qualification, that he believes that they're being sincere. You know?
Friends, people know there's right and there's wrong. So whenever somebody tells me this, I think they believe it. I'm not saying they're lying, but
That's
they
good.
don't really believe it.
Some of them do.
I mean, look, you want to take a personal example to them and just show it to their face. So if somebody's like thinks Trump is just evil, and it's not the point is not politics here, but if somebody holds that view, I'm going to say, if I understand you correctly, then you have no basis for judging anything he said or done as being wrong. This is just your subjective flavor, like whether I should have cream in my coffee or not.
Yeah. Do you have no basis for judging whether cream in coffee is good as a gastronomic subjectivist? No, of course you do. You could judge it to be good or not good. So this idea that you have no basis for making judgments if you're a subjectivist is, I got to say, preposterous. There is absolutely nothing about subjectivism that means you have no basis for making judgments. There is a basis for making judgments. The whole position literally is constituted by a description of the basis for making judgments, which is your personal moral standards or the standards of your culture, depending on if we're talking about, people are unclear about subjectivism, relativism, cultural, individual. It's going to be your standards or the standards of your culture, whatever standard is being indexed to. Absolutely no problem with relativists making judgments. There's no problem with having a basis for them. If a realist is unsatisfied with a subjectivist basis, okay, but it doesn't mean they don't have a basis.
And most people, if they feel that way, aren't going to want to just say, oh yeah, I just don't like him, but he's fine.
Okay, you could, if I wouldn't say I just don't like a person like committing a genocide or something, but it's fine if they do. I would never say that. I really, really, really don't like it. I don't like it to the point that I'm going to try to stop anybody and condemn anybody and oppose anybody that does it. Just because something is a preference doesn't mean the preference has to be like, I just prefer not, but I'm okay if. Okay, so take food preferences. I prefer vanilla ice cream over chocolate. For whatever reason, a lot of people like chocolate ice cream more than vanilla. That's ridiculous. Why? Why do you like chocolate ice cream more than vanilla? Vanilla tastes better, clearly. Now, if someone gives me chocolate ice cream, I don't go, ugh, and throw it at them and go, how dare you, and like hunt down their family and kidnap them all. I wouldn't do that. Why? Because I don't really care that much. Chocolate's fine. But if they gave me like poison ice cream, or they give me ice cream that was made out of the body parts of 1,000 slain people just to make the one scoop of ice cream, I'm going to have serious problems with them doing it. So in the case of dislike, like moral dislike of food preferences, typically I don't care very much because it doesn't have any practical implications for me or anybody else that I care about. So if someone else likes strawberry ice cream more than vanilla, whatever, I don't care. That's not hurting me. But if somebody else prefers to torture my family, okay, well, I would very much prefer that they not. It's still a preference, but it's not a preference where I'm okay with them acting on it. So some preferences, I'm okay with you having it. Some preferences, I'm not okay with you having the preference, and I'm sure as hell not okay with you acting on it. So I'm not okay with someone acting on their preference to torture my family. I'm going to try to stop them. Preferences can do all the work here. It's just some preferences are stronger than others. Some preferences apply to other people's conduct and some don't. I don't have preferences about what other people's food preferences are. I do have preferences about what actions they perform when those actions are practically relevant to me or my family or the people I care about, which is, in some nominal sense, I care about everybody. So you don't need realism to account for a difference between how you handle morality versus how you handle taste preferences. Your moral standards are like your taste preferences insofar as both their preferences, but they're not like them insofar as who they refer to, how seriously you take them, so on and so forth. They're just different preferences that manifest differently. This is not that complicated of a notion. So I don't know why people seem to think you need realism to account for this difference. Cloud of Time, I am glad you have the correct stance on this. Now, I did have so I don't like chocolate ice cream often because it tastes like someone just kind of put cocoa powder in otherwise plain ice cream, and then it just doesn't have a strong enough flavor. I did have someone once, like, they were recoiled when I said I hated chocolate ice cream, and they made me the, like, darkest dark chocolate ice cream. Now, I love dark chocolate. I did try 100% like Baker's chocolate before. That was inedible. I couldn't eat that. But like if it's like, I think I've had 90, 91%. I like that, but I like it in the 70s. I like dark chocolate with just a tad of sugar. I'm not like bitter all the way, but mostly bitter, little sweetness. That's why I like it. I think the ones I had are those 76%, but I don't know why it's that number. Like, why isn't it 79%? Why is it 76 specifically? But so I like that. So they made a really dark chocolate ice cream, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. So there was more sugar and more chocolate, and so it was just really strong. It might be because, I've done those tests to see if you're a super taster, and I tend to be on the low end of flavor. And I also do tend to like floral flavors. So I really like rosewater, orange blossom, those kind of flavors. Lavender, I like lavender. I don't like them to the point where it feels like you're eating shampoo or something, but I do like those flavors. So vanilla kind of has that floral vibe to it. It's another reason I like food with aromatics in it. So like a lot of Chinese food is just amazing to me. So Eric Mashima was like, ew. Well, different people have different physiology. So we're going to have different experiences of these tastes.
That's probably not where they're going to want to go. So find some, by the way, here's another example. Look, right now there's a potential peace plan that's being laid out between Hamas and between Israel. I have strong views about this, but I'm making a different point. One side says Israel is committing genocide in Palestine. The other side says Hamas is trying to commit genocide against Israel. There is no side that says, you know what, genocide is cool. I think you should be able to just wipe people out whenever you want to. It's all like ice cream. Both sides assume that there's an objective moral standard we ought to follow. They differ over who's guilty. They differ over the facts, but they both assume there's an objective moral standard. I want to know.
Yeah, there's no evidence that anybody involved in these altercations are moral realists. I mean, at least no good evidence. They could be, they may not be, but the fact that people have moral standards on these issues does not make them moral realists. And he's not presenting any distinct or specific evidence that would suggest that anybody involved are moral realists. Maybe they are, but just describing people as having moral positions on these matters does not show or demonstrate or provide very good evidence that they're moral realists in particular.
Where that comes from, which tells me everybody knows there's right and wrong.
Yeah, so he just hasn't shown he hasn't provided anything by way of any sort of substantive arguments or evidence for his position. I don't know what's it based on. Not much. All right, so that's it for me. Any final questions, comments? I'll give you a couple minutes while I close things up here. And as usual, do please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out my blog. There'll be links in the description. They should already be there. Yeah, they're already there. What am I talking about? Why am I doubting myself? Check the links in the description. You could find my blog. You could go check that out. I got stuff over there. I got a Discord community. You could join that. We're almost hitting 1,000 people. So you could join that. What else? I got various ways of supporting me if you want to do that. I got a link to the first of these two videos. I'll add a link to the second one. What should I title the video? I don't even know what to title it. If you got suggestions, let me know. Because it's, Knechtle and then Sean McDowell, I don't know what to title the thing, like responding to Christian apologists. What did I call it? Apologists of metaethical relativism and antirealism. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's already accurate. Cool. I'm happy with that, actually. So now I just got to make a thumbnail. What should I make it? I've done too many with ice cream already. If you got suggestions for the thumbnail, let me know. Oh, yeah, coconut. Oh, but Eric says coconut is poison. You're wrong. You're wrong. Coconut is wonderful. I love coconut. I've got Thai coconut pancakes upstairs. I should go have them. In fact, I think I will. Now, they're not really like pancakes. To me, they seem like coconut ravioli. It's like a coconut, almost like a dough. I think it is a dough, like a dumpling. Okay, they're like dumplings. It's like a coconut dumpling made out of coconut and filled with coconut. So yeah, I should make a coconut sauce and dip them in it. That'd be great. Coconut. I want coconut in my coconut. What's that meme? With that, I heard you like X in your X, so I put X in your X, like whatever, and then you fill in the blank for whatever it is. All right. Zictomorph says, okay, coconut ice cream. Coconut ice cream is great. Yeah, I don't know how do I feature coconut ice cream? I could have like a scoop of white ice cream and then there's like coconuts behind it. I think I'll just put coconuts in the thumbnail. No, Wereman says title, Hardened Immoral Atheist Grapples with Moral Realism in all caps. I bet it would get more views if I put something like that in there. Okay. Ben says, that sounds amazing. I don't know if you're talking about the coconut dumplings. I don't know what to call them. Anyway, so there'll be a link in the description to the other two videos. Do feel free to go pop over to those channels and leave a comment, whether supportive or critical or whatever it may be. But what I'm encouraging people to do is if you do that, don't be a jerk, don't be rude, don't contribute to YouTube comment section toxicity. We don't need that. Last question. Locke says, were you ever a theist? Yeah, I was a Christian up until I was about 15 or 16. Then I was like some kind of weird theist for like a year or two, and then I became an atheist. Ben confirms the dumplings. Yeah, let me look up what they're called, because there's no way that they're called pancakes. That doesn't sound right, because they don't look like pancakes. In fact, wait, I have a channel. I could just show them. Called Canum Croc. Yeah, that's them. Let me share my screen. They sell them at Trader Joe's. You can just buy like a package of it. It's probably not as good as the like homemade, but so check it out. So that's what they look like. The ones I have don't look quite as round. They're more flattened and they look more like ravioli. But so check them out. I think they're good. Okay. Anyway, so I am going to head out. Thanks everybody for being here. I'm glad we got to talk about food. Glad we got to talk about music. Glad I got to yell about stuff. I will see you all later. Take care. And where is I got to find the outro video. Outro video time. See y'all later.